Welcome back to 3D Dialogue. The topic is Falun Gong, and I'm in studio with Joel Chipkar, spokesman for the Falun Dafa Association of Canada. Now, before the break, we were talking a little about how the Chinese government initially facilitated and supported, but then decided that this was really too powerful a movement and turned around to try to control it. And perhaps one of the misconceptions I think that certainly I have, and perhaps other people have, is the nature of the politics of the Falun Gong. And many people perhaps may see it as a political movement rather than a spiritual movement. Could you comment on this misperception and perhaps speak to the reality?
The reality of it in China is the #1 weapon the Chinese Communist regime is using against dissidents, especially Falun Gong, is propaganda. It's the #1 weapon used in every genocide throughout history. And in China, if you call Falun Gong political, it has a really bad connotation.
It sort of scares people away.
It scares people away because the communist regime, through their 60 years of rule, have brainwashed the people that the Communist Party is God. And nobody goes against the Communist Party. So whatever the Communist Party says is for your own good, and you have to comply.
Sort of a political monopoly that for there to be an alternative political body is the greatest ill that one could take against this God.
That's right. Like in the West, being a politician in most cases is a pretty elite designation, but in China, you're looked at, it's evil. You know, it's against the government. You know, you do nothing against the government. It didn't really work. The political part of Falun Gong, to me, really has no. It's not political. Falun Gong, it's a spiritual discipline. It's like if somebody walks into my house, rapes my wife, and kills my children. Am I going to go to my local police office? Am I going to go to my local government and say, please help me? You know, help stop this, help catch these criminals. Yes. Is that looked at as political? No. The problem is now you have a government, someone who's supposed to be taking care of their people. A government is to help the people. This regime is doing just that. It's killing their own people. It's creating extreme havoc against this group of 100 million people in China and basically turning public opinion against them to hate and to fear Falun Gong practitioners.
But what about, let's say, outside of China, which, I mean, certainly we can discuss the, again, remarkable growth of Falun Gong, not just in China mainland, but all around the world. It also sometimes seems, again, to people who are not familiar with the practice of Falun Gong, that there is a political element, again, resisting this repression from the Chinese state.
It's a resistance. It's definitely a resistance. If the persecution didn't happen, like Falun Gong's been in Canada since 1994. We would all be in parks or at home doing our exercises and reading our book and you know, working and living in community. We would not be on St. George Street in Toronto.
Well, that's a good example. I mean, why don't perhaps you elaborate a little more on, I mean, St. George, the Chinese consulate here in Toronto is on St. George Street. Perhaps you could tell the audience who may not be in Toronto more about what's been going on there.
Well, since 2001, we've been there 24 hours a day to stop the Chinese regime from killing Falun Gong practitioners. And the support we've got from the community has been really, really great. In the beginning, like anything, people didn't know who we were, what we were doing there. Are we political? Are we not? But when they see us, practitioners all around the world, Falun Gong all around the world, have only resisted with peaceful and rational appeals. You'd never seen us throw anything. You'd never seen us yelling. We continue to respect our principles of truth, compassion, and tolerance, but we're very active in bringing awareness to the persecution because it's illegal, it's wrong, and innocent people are dying. So if you call that political, I don't care what you call it, as long as we help stop it. And we believe that awareness is the light bulb that gets rid of the darkness. Once the awareness is out there, people start to realize, then China has to change.
Now, taking for a moment, stepping away from China and looking at the Falun Gong in the international context, as we've mentioned a few times, its growth really is quite exponential when you look at it only being around for 14 years, I guess, now. Can you tell us a bit more of how successful and perhaps what has driven this growth and what has driven this expansion across the world?
I think well, I know it's the teaching. You know, when I first started, I was you know, somewhat spiritual, but I always had that, you know, that inner thought of what's the meaning of life? Why are we here? And I didn't want to join any kind of religion. I didn't want to join any kind of spiritual practice where I had to pay money. My mom actually introduced me to Falun Gong back in 1998, and it was free. There was no money. Nobody was knocking on my door wondering what my name was, or, you know, if I had to sign any papers. There was no organization. And it was just, you know what, we've really benefited from this. It's helped us become a lot more peaceful in this stressful society. You can do these exercises. You can read this theory. If it speaks to you, that's great. If not, we're not going to bother you. And I read it. It was amazing.
But I mean, that's really quite fascinating to me, in that it's not evangelical and it's sort of autonomous, distributed state perhaps is its success, that anyone who is introduced to it or is turned on to it can become part of it without having to sign a dues card or without having to express loyalty to a guru. And at the same time seems to really speak to the nature of the global village and the nature of the world that we're living in terms of its chaos. Does it therefore, is Falun Gong therefore really reflective of that global diversity? Is there a great multiculturalism inside of Falun Gong, or is it still predominantly Chinese, ethnically Chinese people who comprise its practitioners?
There's a great multicultural diversity in Falun Gong. I think it's in over 60 countries right now. Africa, India, Iraq, Mexico, North America, Russia. It's spread because of these principles and because of the effects, because of the effects of this practice that people have really truly felt in their lives. People have become a lot more peaceful. They've become a lot more compassionate to their family members. They become more healthy and more tolerant.
Well, and it seems very much a results-oriented practice, that you see those results almost immediately in terms of adhering to the principles and following the principles.
I have. You know, it's a spiritual practice. Everybody has different lives. Everybody has become become a part of society in their own way. So it speaks to everyone differently, you know, and it's very open like that. And it's written from an ancient Chinese viewpoint where they really focused on the upgrade of morality, the upgrade of virtue. In order to ascend, in order to unlock your wisdom, your enlightenment, you have to be a good person. That's the fundamental issue. If you want to get greedy and you want to make money, you know, off of this teaching, and you want to,
then it's really not for you.
Then it's not for you, because you won't get anything. The fundamental goal is to ascend, is to unlock your wisdom, but the base is you have to be a good person.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and certainly enlightening us as to the teachings of Falun Gong, but also the potential that it holds for everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
That was Joel Chipkar, spokesman for the Falun Dafa Association of Canada. Next on the program, how to cope with the loss of your beloved animals. Right after this short break, you're watching 3D Dialogue.
Call the Rogers Television Viewer Response Line at 1-800-939-7787 or visit our website with your comments.